The Falklands War, also known as the Falklands Conflict, Falklands Crisis, and the Guerra del Atlántico Sur, was a 10-week war between Argentina and the United Kingdom over two British overseas territories in the South Atlantic, the Falkland Islands and South Georgia and the South Sandwich Islands. It began on Friday, the 2nd of April 1982, when Argentina invaded and occupied the Falkland Islands in an attempt to establish the sovereignty it had claimed over them. On the 5th of April, the British government dispatched a naval task force to engage the Argentine Navy and Air Force before making an amphibious assault on the islands. The conflict lasted 74 days and ended with the Argentine surrender on the 14th of June 1982, returning the islands to British control. In total, 649 Argentine military personnel, 255 British military personnel, and 3 Falkland Islanders died during the hostilities. The conflict was a major episode in the protracted confrontation over the territory's sovereignty. Argentina asserted that the islands are Argentine territory, and the Argentine government thus characterized its military action as the reclamation of its own territory. The British government regarded the action as an invasion of a territory that had been a crown colony since 1841. Falkland Islanders, who have inhabited the islands since the early 19th century, are predominantly descendants of British settlers, and favour British sovereignty. Neither state, however, officially declared war, and hostilities were almost exclusively limited to the territories under dispute and the area of the South Atlantic where they lie. The conflict has had a strong impact in both countries and has been the subject of various books, articles, films, and songs. Patriotic sentiment ran high in Argentina, but the outcome prompted large protests against the ruling military government, hastening its downfall. In the United Kingdom, the Conservative Party government, bolstered by the successful outcome, was re-elected the following year. The cultural and political weight of the conflict has had less effect in Britain than in Argentina, where it remains a continued topic for discussion. Relations between the United Kingdom and Argentina were restored in 1989 following a meeting in Madrid, Spain, at which the two countries' governments issued a joint statement. No change in either country's position regarding the sovereignty of the Falkland Islands was made explicit. In 1994, Argentina's claim to the territories was added to its constitution. Lead up to the conflict, in the period leading up to the war, and, in particular, following the transfer of power between the military dictators General Jorge Rafael Videla and General Roberto Eduardo Viola late in March 1981, Argentina had been in the midst of a devastating economic stagnation and large-scale civil unrest against the military junta that had been governing the country since 1976. In December 1981 there was a further change in the Argentine military regime, bringing to office a new junta headed by General Leopoldo Galtieri, Brigadier Basilio Lamidoso and Admiral Jorge Anaya. Anaya was the main architect and supporter of a military solution for the long-standing claim over the islands, calculating that the United Kingdom would never respond militarily. By opting for military action, the Galtieri government hoped to mobilize the long-standing patriotic feelings of Argentines towards the islands, and thus divert public attention from the country's chronic economic problems and the regime's ongoing human rights violations. Such action would also bolster its dwindling legitimacy. The newspaper La Prensa speculated in a step-by-step plan beginning with cutting off supplies to the islands, ending in direct actions late in 1982. If the UN talks were fruitless, the ongoing tension between the two countries over the islands increased on the 19th of March when a group of Argentine scrap metal metal merchants raised the Argentine flag at South Georgia, an act that would later be seen as the first offensive action in the war. The Royal Navy ice patrol vessel HMS Endurance was dispatched from Stanley to South Georgia in response, subsequently leading to the invasion of South Georgia by Argentine forces on the 3rd of April. The Argentine military junta, suspecting that the UK would reinforce its South Atlantic forces, ordered the invasion of the Falkland Islands to be brought forward to the 2nd of April. Britain was initially taken by surprise by the Argentine attack on the South Atlantic Islands. Despite repeated warnings by Royal Navy Captain Nicholas Barker and others, Barker believed that Defense Secretary John Nott's 1981 review sent a signal to the Argentines that Britain was unwilling, and would soon be unable, to defend its territories and subjects in the Falklands. Argentine invasion. On the 2nd of April 1982, Argentine forces mounted amphibious landings off the Falkland Islands. Following the civilian occupation of South Georgia on the 19th of March, before the Falklands War began, the invasion was met with a nominal defense organized by the Falkland Islands Governor Sir Rex Hunt, giving command to Major Mike Norman of the Royal Marines. The events of the invasion included the landing of Lieutenant Commander Guillermo Sanchez Sabarot's amphibious commandos group, the attack on Moody Brook Barracks, the engagement between the troops of Hugo Santillan and Bill Trollope at Stanley, and the final engagement and surrender at Government House. Initial British response. Word of the invasion first reached Britain from Argentine sources. A Ministry of Defence operative in London had a short telex conversation with Governor Hunt's telex operator, who confirmed that Argentines were on the island and in control. Later that day, BBC journalist Laurie Margolis spoke with an islander at Goose Green via amateur radio, who confirmed the presence of a large Argentine fleet and that Argentine forces had taken control of the island. Operation Corporate was the code name given to the British military operations in the Falklands War. The commander of Task Force Operations was Admiral Sir John Fieldhouse. Operations lasted from the 1st of April 1982 to the 20th of June 1982. The British undertook a series of military operations as a means of recapturing the Falklands from Argentine occupation. The British government had taken action prior to the 2nd of April invasion. In response to events on South Georgia, the submarines HMS Splendid and HMS Spartan were ordered to sail south on the 29th of March, whilst the stores ship Royal Fleet Auxiliary Fort Austin was dispatched from the western Mediterranean to support HMS Endurance. Lord Carrington had wished to send a third submarine, but the decision was deferred due to concerns about the impact on operational commitments. Coincidentally, on the 26th of March, the submarine HMS Superb left Gibraltar and it was assumed in the press it was heading south. There has since been speculation that the effect of those reports was to panic the Argentine junta into invading the Falklands before nuclear submarines could be deployed. The following day, during a crisis meeting headed by the Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, the Chief of the Naval Staff, Admiral Sir Henry Leach, advised them that Britain could and should send a task force if the islands are invaded. On the 1st of April, Leach sent orders to a Royal Navy force carrying out exercises in the Mediterranean to prepare to sail south. Following the invasion on the 2nd of April, after an emergency meeting of the Cabinet, approval was given to form a task force to retake the islands. This was backed in an emergency session of the House of Commons the next day. On the 6th of April, the British government set up a war cabinet to provide day-to-day political oversight of the campaign. This was the critical instrument of crisis management for the British, with its remit being to keep under review political and military developments relating to the South Atlantic, and to report as necessary to the Defence and Overseas Policy Committee. Until it was dissolved on the 12th of August, the War Cabinet met at least daily. Although Margaret Thatcher is described as dominating the War Cabinet, Lawrence Freedman notes in the official history of the Falklands campaign that she did not ignore opposition or fail to consult others. However, once a decision was reached, she did not look back. Position of third-party countries. On the evening of the 3rd of April, the United Kingdom's United Nations Ambassador Sir Anthony Parsons put a draft resolution to the United Nations Security Council. The resolution, which condemned the hostilities and demanded the immediate Argentine withdrawal from the islands, was adopted by the Council the following day as United Nations Security Council Resolution 502, which passed with 10 votes in support, 1 against and 4 abstentions. The UK received further political support from the Commonwealth of Nations and the European Economic Community. The EEC also provided economic support by imposing economic sanctions on Argentina. Argentina itself was politically backed by a majority of countries in Latin America and some members of the non-aligned movement. On the 20th of May 1982, the Prime Minister of New Zealand, Rob Muldoon, announced that he would make HMNZS Canterbury, a Leander-class frigate, available for use where the British thought fit to release a Royal Navy vessel for the Falklands. The war was an unexpected event in a world strained by the Cold War and the North-South divide. The response of some countries was the effort to mediate the crisis, and later, as the war began, the support based in terms of anti-colonialism, political solidarity, historical relationships, or realpolitik. The United States was concerned by the prospect of Argentina turning to the Soviet Union for support, and initially tried to mediate an end to the conflict. However, when Argentina refused the U.S. peace overtures, U.S. Secretary of State Alexander Haig announced that the United States would prohibit arms sales to Argentina and provide material support for British operations. Both houses of the U.S. Congress passed resolutions supporting the U.S. action, siding with the United Kingdom. The U.S. provided the United Kingdom with military equipment ranging from submarine detectors to the latest missiles. President Ronald Reagan approved the Royal Navy's request to borrow the Sea Harrier-capable amphibious assault ship RC Iwo Jima if the British lost an aircraft carrier. The United States Navy developed a plan to help the British man the ship with American military contractors, likely retired sailors with knowledge of the Iwo Jima's systems. France provided dissimilar aircraft training so Harrier pilots could train against the French aircraft used by Argentina. French and British intelligence also worked to prevent Argentina from obtaining more Exocet missiles on the international market, while at the same time Peru attempted to purchase 12 missiles for Argentina in a failed secret operation. Chile gave support to Britain in the form of intelligence about the Argentine military and early warning intelligence on Argentine air movements. Throughout the war, Argentina was afraid of a Chilean military intervention in Patagonia and kept some of her best mountain regiments away from the Falklands near the Chilean border as a precaution. While France overtly backed the United Kingdom, a French technical team remained in Argentina throughout the war. French government sources have said that the French team was engaged in intelligence gathering. However, it simultaneously provided direct material support to the Argentines, identifying and fixing faults in Exocet missile launch. According to the book Operation Israel, advisors from Israel Aerospace Industries were already in Argentina and continued the work during the conflict. The book also claims that Israel sold weapons and dropped tanks in a secret operation in Peru. Peru also openly sent Mirages, pilots and missiles, to Argentina during the war. Peru had earlier transferred 10 Hercules transport planes to Argentina soon after the British task force had set sail in April 1982. Nick Van Der Biel records that, after the Argentine defeat at Goose Green, Venezuela and Guatemala offered to send paratroops to the Falklands. Through Libya under Muammar Gaddafi, Argentina received 20 launches and 60 SAR-7 missiles, as well as machine guns, mortars and mines. All in all, the lead of 4 trips of 2 Boeing 707s of the AAF refueled in Recife with the knowledge and consent of the Brazilian government. Some of these clandestine logistics operations were mounted by the Soviet Union.